This is XDefiant. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is an updated look at the, well, XDefiant ongoing, I guess you would say testing, or I don't even know if it's really a beta anymore. I thought we would do an update since, well, there's been a number of tests, and it's literally been a year since we last reviewed the beta, as I had assumed at some point we were going to be playing the full game. So, yeah, definitely a bit confusing to see that this one still hasn't released. It's really, really odd. So this is a free-to-play shooter that's this combination mismatch of different Tom Clancy and, in general, Ubisoft franchises. It used to be just, you know, a Tom Clancy kind of thing, but it has blown up and dropped that moniker. It used to be Tom Clancy's XDefiant, and now it's just XDefiant and has a whole bunch of really just random Ubisoft franchises thrown together, and I would imagine they're probably going to add more over time, since this will be a live service game, since it's a free-to-play multiplayer game like they all are these days. And yeah, let's jump in and talk about the technical elements. So here is the, I guess you would say, to some degree, the quality mode of the game. So this is like your dynamic 4K 60 mode. Oh, how did you escape? That's crazy to me. How did that person actually get out of there and survive? How is this person not dying? You gotta be kidding me. So the 4K 60 mode, it's pretty smooth, looks good, plays well, sharp. Then you can go into the settings and adjust the FOV if you'd like to. It's at 100 by default. Then you can go to video and you can turn on the 120 Hz mode, which greatly improves the frame rate. And thankfully, with the new capture card, thanks Elgato, I can actually see, well, play 120 FPS and record it very easily. So YouTube still doesn't support that, but you're more easily able to get an idea of how it looks and whatnot, and I don't have to jump through hoops to be able to do that. So for the 120 Hz mode, it looks like we dropped down to like a dynamic 1440p at 120 FPS, and it's very fluid, feels very smooth. I think the picture quality is still relatively good. I mean, it's definitely a bit of a drop, but it's not really that bad. Now, I will say that this mode is not necessarily perfect, as it does have some light bits of screen tearing to it. Not the biggest deal in the world, but that is something I noticed while playing. If you've got the VRR going on, though, that should clean things up completely for you, I would imagine. But yeah, it does seem like there is some screen tearing kind of present, but I mean, most of you are going to be doing game mode and whatnot. You don't have a capture set up like I do, where you have to have things all weird and finicky, but yeah, that's just something I observed. But it looks great, it runs really smoothly, the high frame rate is incredible for this kind of game because, you know, you don't have that aggressive aim assist that you normally would for these types of games. So you've got to get every edge that you can, and playing this at the higher frame rate is pretty great for the response time and whatnot. It's a little hard of a game to really get into, if that makes sense. Like, it takes a little bit before you get to the flow of it, especially if you're so used to other shooters where there is a lot more, especially with the controller and whatnot, like, I want to say coddling to some degree. Like, this one is just fast-paced, and I guess the word would be a little, like, floaty, if that makes sense at all. Like, yeah, that's probably the best way to kind of describe it, is it has, like, a real kind of floaty vibe to it, where it's fast, quick, the time to kill is really swift. I have noticed the big difference between this and the last beta type experience, which was in the summer of 23, and this is like spring 24 that we're doing this. We may have another review not too far down the road, because, you know, the full actual game might be coming out, but I was like, oh wow, it's been a literal year. Time to do an updated review, right? Like, that's a long time, especially for something like beta-wise, and I just kind of like, when is this ever coming out is the big question. Now, I noticed that movement seems to have been adjusted a bit from the previous time, and there's a lot of people that now do, like, crouch-shotting and stuff, kind of like something you would see exhibited in a Halo game, where people are trying to, like, dodge shots by going up and down, and yeah, a little annoying. I don't know how effective it is for people, but I do notice enough people kind of attempting that I'm kind of like, okay, so this is definitely a thing. But like, it's pretty intense. Like, you can die in seconds, as you've been seeing. Like, you don't even get like a response time. You got to be super fast. Hence the higher frame rate being pretty helpful. So we've got a few different modes here, a few different ways to play. You can kind of do your own little composer thing and be like, hey, I want to play this mode or that mode, or you can just kind of search for all modes. Oh, those mines are annoying. So that's really up to you and how you want to play it. But they're all objective focused. This is one where we're kind of capturing like zones. There's escort missions on larger maps. The game actually has a great selection of levels to it, honestly. Like, there's a good selection of maps here. Some are entirely unique to this. Others are kind of like, I guess you would say, ripped from the Division. Oh, and we gotta go into another match here. As I was saying, a lot of the maps, or, well, a chunk of them kind of taken from the Division, at least aesthetically and design-wise. But you get this really interesting combination of levels that somehow fit in with all of the different kind of franchises. Like, there's one where you're doing, like, literally the special headquarters for the Splinter Cell organization crew, and you know, they're all reminiscent of different things, and they come together in this sort of aesthetic that works for this particular title. It's really interesting how that's even kind of possible. I can't believe I'm dying this much right off the bat. That's kind of rough. So, like, aesthetics-wise, gameplay-wise, it all kind of fits nicely together. It's fast, it's smooth. It's just also kind of like, to some degree, a bit generic, I guess you would say. Like, it's a hard one to fully place, because I do kind of like playing it. I don't mind playing it, but I wouldn't necessarily pick it over other shooters, if that makes sense. Like, it's alright. You know, they call this one the COD killer, the Call of Duty killer, and it's just like, I don't really see that. But it's an interesting concept. I also do ponder window release-wise if they keep kind of missing their opportunity to get this one out timely-wise. But yeah, representation-wise, we've got things like Watch Dogs and Far Cry. There is Splinter Cell, but for whatever reason, I guess it was like glitched right now, so they removed it. But usually there's a Splinter Cell character I play as that has a great ultimate. But, you know, we got like the Cleaners from the Division, the Phantoms from Ghost Recon, Libertad from Far Cry, DedSec from Watch Dogs, and then finally there would be the Splinter Cell crew, right? Splinter Cell would be in this. But they've been removed! No! And your characters, they're basically all the same, but there is like a special ability they have. This one has the useless fire on the ground attack. And then, you know, you get like a flamethrower if you get like enough of that time wheel around, and you know, different characters, different things. The Splinter Cell one is really good because you could like see through walls with your special goggles and do like insta pistol kills. It's really on brand. The whole thing is kind of like a silly, fun, light kind of combination of different, well, Ubisoft franchises. That's the whole game, as I've kind of mentioned. But it is sleek with lots of weapons, custom classes you can make, unique perks, lots of attachments for your guns. It's kind of like a weird thing where it's almost like, I get the ideas that the brands maybe are what tie people into this one, but I also think as a shooter itself, it could have maybe had a more unique identity had it been just another shooter, but I guess that would make it kind of more generic as just a generic kind of tactical objective shooter. Because obviously, like I mentioned, they shedded the Tom Clancy branding, so they obviously don't want this to be in line with those games. I don't know, it's really weird. I also think XDefiant is kind of an odd name for this game. I think it's an odd name for any game. So branding-wise, I'm very confused about it. And it's a lot of odd choices. Like, it works. Like I said, it works fine. I'm fine playing it. I don't necessarily get bored of it. It's nice and smooth. There's a good amount of maps, a good amount of content. It just also, there's just something about it that doesn't, like, blow my mind, if that makes sense. Like, it's weird, because it probably comes across as I'm being very negative towards this game, when I really do think it's kind of a solid, so-so experience, you know? I actually quite find the Escort mission and stuff to be rather interesting, and I kind of wish they came up a little bit more on my rotation. And I guess I could set that and wait a little bit longer, but just going for quick matches, right? But, yeah, it's alright. I guess it's neat that it's all objective focused. I like that and appreciate that even more, that they're making a game that's focused on the objectives. And it does have a bit of an edge of difficulty to, like, you know, getting into the swing of things. Like, you die aggressively fast, and if you're not used to that from other games, it could be, you know, it could be a real challenge to kind of be like, oh, okay, you know, getting used to how fast everything moves, how fast the time to kill is. That's the big thing, is like the time to kill and stuff like this is insanely quick. You really rarely ever get the response time unless you have a high frame rate going on, right? Which is a huge advantage. But I think, you know, as I've said, it plays well. It looks fine. They have a good variety of environments, a good variety of characters. It's a pretty solid foundation for them to build upon. If this game does take off, like, there's actually quite a lot to sink your teeth into, especially if you're coming in, I guess you would say, sort of fresh, as opposed to having, like, you know, played these betas and whatnot. Like, you'll have a better edge of understanding of all the maps and stuff, and it won't seem as crazy. But if you're coming in here fresh, you're gonna have a whole bunch of different maps and game modes and stuff to play. Holy, that was ridiculous. Like, I literally just appeared there and was, like, eviscerated. Yeah, some of the spawning stuff for this mode could be a little better, I think. Like, there was one time where I got, like, sniped, and then I spawned right where the sniper, like, sniped me, like, really, just to be, like, sniped a second time, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it's not bad, though, but it's like it's not a small map, so you shouldn't really be appearing in front of people, if that makes sense. Yeah, XDefiant. It's one of those games where I'm sort of on the edge of, yeah, I think it's competent, it gets the job done. I think some people are going to have more fun with this than necessarily others, but at the end of the day, I really do wonder what that real hook is that's going to kind of keep players playing this, as opposed to bailing on it and moving to other things. I know it's free to play, but that's really just standard for shooters, you know, that aren't the primary ones. And into another match. Because when you look at this, it's sort of like, oh, if you're a Splinter Cell fan, it doesn't really play like Splinter Cell. If you're a Far Cry fan, it doesn't really play like Far Cry. You get what I mean, where it's sort of, what is the hook here that's really going to draw people in for the long term, unless people just love that games kind of are reminiscent of franchises they really like. I guess that could be its big sort of hook thing, but other than that, it's, yeah, that's kind of its thing. It's just a kind of generic shooter, which we have a lot of those these days. I just really feel like I come across hard on this game, because it really is. It's just okay and solid, but I wouldn't pick it over other stuff. Which makes it sound so much worse than it is. Because they've put together a decent, solid shooter. I'd love to have more shooter games like this pop up that are, you know, doing different things. I just wish there was some kind of extra little bit of this that was like that big hook that really wants you to keep playing this one and keep seeing things. Like, we've got, you know, leveling and all these sort of boosters and stuff that are present in this game being, you know, tested at this current point in time. It's like, it feels like a really complete release, and I'm just pondering, you know, like, where is this experience? Why hasn't it just fully come out yet? And it would be very funny doing this, like, review type thing, and then basically it releasing a little bit later on, but yeah, I do kind of ponder why they've really held off so long on this one on so many different accounts. Because this really should have been something that we already had the full release of, and kind of were deciding if the long-term kind of setup of this was going to be, like, viable and whatnot. I think that'll be a big part of it, too, is, like, a steady influx of extra content and whatnot. Considering they've held this back so long, I would imagine they've probably actually streamlined and set up a lot of extra content for it. Like, it just feels like you're floating around the world, just kind of like soaring through these environments. It's crazy how fast you move in this. I guess that's just shooters these days. Super, super twitchy, fast as possible. Like, it never feels like too fast in terms of not being able to, like, control things and stuff, but it really does feel like you just sort of soar through the environment without any kind of waiting. Which is really odd, because you don't feel as placed in the world. Yeah, at least the clouds move. Like, it looks nice. It actually does. Like, the environments do look nice. And it does have that, like, sort of Ubisoft look to it, which is intriguing as well. What an oddity. What an oddity. But a neat mix of objectives. I do like the different modes. I do like the settings. I do like the vibes, the approach of a tactical feel. You know, the idea that you should be working together to get the job done. Neat, like, abilities and stuff you can unleash. And it does look like there's a decent array of different factions and or characters. It would be kind of cool if you could make your own character, if that makes sense, for each of the factions. I don't really know why you're locked to these very specific generic placeholder characters, because it's like they're not hero characters, right? They're not somebody that's a distinctly unique character where it's like, oh, that's hero this thing. It's, you know, a bunch of characters that are basically cosplaying as these different characters from different universes. At least that's how I think about it. And we gotta fit in another match. It's like Gotham City Imposters a little bit, if you think about it, huh? Alright, let's keep this battle rolling. I don't know why we keep getting these same maps at this point. There are, I promise you, other modes and other levels. As I said, the whole basically guiding the convoy and stuff is fun. And then they've got this other one, which I don't know if I'm loving, but it's sort of like a Territories from Halo playlist. Like, where you capture, like, positions and you move along. Like, they do actually have a good selection of different objective themed modes in this one that are encouraging you to play together, but I don't know if there's also, like, team-based indicator stuff that really gets you to team play. I feel like I'm just running along and there's other people shooting people too while I'm doing this. It's a weird setup. I do really genuinely wonder if this one has what it takes to, like, be that next big shooter, or if it's gonna sort of just, like, vanish to some degree. I don't know, but I am curious about the weird that we're going to be going on with XDefiant, as it seems like some kind of those, like, a weird pitch thing that you would randomly do, where you're kind of like, well, we need, you know, a live service game. What kind of franchises we have? Why don't we just, like, shove them all together and call it a day? And that really seems to be what this is. We're just throwing all the Ubisoft franchises together as the shooter, and yeah, how do we make this, you know, not too silly in terms of abilities, while also giving us, like, glimpses into the different franchises? And this is what we've ended up with, for better or for worse. I think it's solid. I think it's okay. Will it attract an audience? I'm not really too sure. How long will this last? No idea. But, kind of a neat concept, that's for sure, and hopefully the next time we visit this one is not too long from now with a final sort of review, definite thoughts on this overall package as it actually releases. Yeah.